As I like to do, I have about 10 or 11 shilas that I jotted down that I got this week. As I like to do, I always like to mention what I spoke about Friday night, just so that it's recorded. So I was asked about what is the proper way to check your fingernails during havdala and why we do it. So the halacha brought down in Shulchan Aruch, and this is actually something that a lot of people are not aware of, is you have to be close enough to the flame that you could benefit from the flame in order to recite the bracha or to be yotze the mitzvah. Meaning, if you say the bracha and I'm 100 feet away, 200 feet away, it's pashas, I'm not yotze. Now, b'di'evid, fine, but l'chachila, it's definitely not. So you have to be close enough to benefit. Now, what type of benefit? So the Gemara says, close enough that you could see the difference between two different types of coins. A nickel and a dime. Okay. So nowadays, it says the Shulchan Aruch, we don't check nickel and dime. Practically, because we don't have money, it's still Shabbos. So what do? What we do is we look at the difference between the fingernails and the skin around the fingernails. It's from the Pirkei Rav Eliezer. Now, why the fingernails and the skin around it as opposed to any other two items, a spoon and a fork? So Rav Haigain brings down two reasons. One is that you always have your fingers with you. It's very easy, practically, it's right there. Or a second reason is because fingernails grow, and you want to show growth. Beginning of the week, it's a siman bracha. But I think the more famous reason is from the Kolbai in Simon Aleph. The Kolbai says that Adam Rishon originally, whatever this means, he was originally covered in fingernails. And due to the sin of the Eitz Hadas, the fingernails rescinded and leaving what we have left. And he only noticed it on Motzei Shabbos, because Motzei Shabbos we make a Barim Hara'esh is said on Motzei Shabbos only because that's when Adam Rishon had the chachma to make fire, that he was terrified because he had never seen darkness before, because Shabbos kept the light of the world going, and then all of a sudden Shabbos is over, and he started to be terrified. So Hashem gave him the chachma of striking two rocks together, and he made fire, and he saw that his nails had been rescinded. So we always look at them in order to remind ourselves. So how do you do it practically? So the Shulchan Aruch brings down that because you're also a Kabbalah supposed to look at the palm of your hand, it's also a good reason for Kabbalistic reasons. So what you do is you take your four fingers and you cover the thumb, a Kabbalah, you cover the thumb, and you look. And you get to see the nails, the skin around the nails, and the palm like that. Some people from the Magen Avram then stretch their hand out and they see the back of their hand. But that's it. But Be'ikr is the right hand, four fingers cover the thumb, al pi Kabbalah, that's what you're supposed to do. Okay. So in a large environment where you're not close enough, so first of all, push your way to get close enough. Or what I would do is maybe I would say Barim Hara'esh after havdala. I mean, b'di'evid, the truth is, I don't know, because b'di'evid, they bring down from the Kaf HaChaim. The Kaf HaChaim said that if you're far enough away that you're not close enough to actually see your fingernails, whatever it is, or to benefit from it, you are yotze b'di'evid. But it's not ideal. Okay, but yotze b'di'evid, so I guess you got that. But it's not ideal. It's not l'chachila when you have a big room. It's not l'chachila for sure not. So. Yeah, Baruch Hashem. So I got a shiloh today. It just came up. I don't want to clarify this. Someone asked me, we know that if someone is in the process of converting, we know Goyim can't keep Shabbos. I think it's a famous thing. Goyim can't keep Shabbos. So the question is, if you have someone who's in the process of converting, so how do they avoid being Shomer Shabbos? You're not supposed to be Shomer Shabbos, but how do they avoid being Shomer Shabbos? So it came up because Daf Yomi. We talked about a talis, wearing a talis. It was in the Mishabur Yomi, wearing tzitzis when there's no eruv. It was Daf Yomi today. So I just want to mention, because I couldn't really go into it in the daf, so I want to just clarify. There's a shita of the hafla. Rabbi Steinberg told me that this is what they practically rely on. They rely on the hafla. It's a very fascinating hafla. The hafla says like this. This is something already. It's from midrashim already that imply this, that Goyim and Jews do not have the same calendar. We follow the night before the day. They follow day and then night. Meaning, their Tuesday starts at midnight. 12:01 is their Tuesday, halachically. Our Tuesday starts Monday night by Tzeis. So says the Haflah, the Isser of a Goy keeping Shabbos is for them to keep their Saturday. So it's not also for them to keep Friday night to Motzei Shabbos. What's also for them is from Saturday morning until midnight on Saturday night, which is never a problem because the second Shabbos is over, they drive home. It'll only be an issue if Shabbos goes into Yom Tov. Then Rabbi Steinberg says, because then you have a 2-day, but then they have to make sure they do the lights or something like that. Just so the point is, but it's not a halachic problem because they don't have to be shomer. There's no issue of them being shomer our Shabbos. There's an issur for them being shomer their Shabbos. And that's a much better solution than trying to get them to be Michal Shabbos, because from my experience, people in the process of converting do not want to be told that they're not keeping Shabbos, because their whole point is their mindset is they're now in the game. So that's where Rabbi Steinberg says that they follow that. So I just want to mention that. It's an interesting sheet of lafla. Okay, I got a shaila today. Someone told me that, I don't know why, they cracked eggs into like some sort of bowl and they put it in the fridge. So it's shelled eggs. It was already eggs, not in the shell, in the fridge. Is it a problem? So I told him like this: it's a machlokes. I was kind of hoping that they would be machmer, because why? There's a couple eggs. Well, why would we make it? And he said, fine, he'll throw it out. I didn't tell him to do that. I told him, okay, malcolm to make it, but let me explain. The Gemara says in Nida. I wrote down the Gemara because it's a fascinating Gemara. Gemara Nida daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Amar Shim Bar Yochai. Hey dvarim hein sha'oisa oisen mischai ben afshay. V'dame b'roishay. There are 5 things that if you do, you're putting your life in your own hands. It is a dangerous thing, and these are the 5 things. Ha'oichel shum kalaf. If you eat peeled garlic, betzel kalaf, peeled onions, beya klufa, peeled eggs. And the Gemara says, meaning if they were left overnight. And the Gemara says, afagav de manchi besilto metzayir v'chasimi. Even if they're sealed, meaning you put them in the fridge. Ruach ra shayra alein. There's a ruach ra that's shayra on peeled eggs, peeled onions, and peeled garlic. And if you leave them even in the fridge, you can't eat them. And it says the Gemara, if you leave some of the shell on, or some of the onion, some of that hair part, that outer layer with the crispy outer layer, if you leave some of that, then it's fine. But if you just completely peel it in onion, garlic, or egg, it's dame b'roisha. Okay, so you hear that? That's very frightening. Now, by the way, yes, I'll get to that in a second. Correct, but that wasn't this case. But I'll tell you that. I'll get back to that. It's a good point to remember. So, by the way, now the question is, does this still halacha apply nowadays? So the Maram Rutenberg said no, because he says nowadays we don't have ruach ra anymore. But came out all the other Rishonim and many Achronim bring it down la halacha. Rav Belsky felt very strong that you should be machmer. Rav Shechter actually felt more to be mekel nowadays with all these things, because we're not ruach ra anymore. But for the OU, they're definitely machmer conceptually, like for the catering business, whatever it is. So the shaila is like this. And by the way, even if you did it, you have to throw it out. The Gemara says dame b'roishay. Now I will say this about eggs. The reason why I was a little bit more room to be lenient by eggs is for the following reason. Rashi in his girsa does not have eggs. He has eggs taken out. Also, there's a shaila in the Achronim: is the eggs peeled or raw? The Darkei Tshuva held that it's only a problem if it's hard-boiled eggs that are peeled. Which, by the way, some people do that. They peel it and they have extra and they leave it in the fridge. The Darkei Tshuva said that's the problem. Other places can say no, it's only a problem if it's raw. And because either way, some are lenient, some poskim, felt that okay, it's not the end of the world, because the Tzitz Eliezer felt that you could always rely on if you want to use peeled raw eggs, you could say, well, I hold it's peeled hard-boiled are the problem. And if you eat the hard-boiled that are peeled, you can say, well, I hold the raw is a problem. And because of this, the danger is mistama okay. But Rav Belsky said, afal pikin, you should be machmer. So I told the person, it's malkin mekel, but I was hoping that he would be machmer. And you made a good point, which I mentioned once, is that if you go to the stores, you could buy large containers of peeled garlic with a hechsher. Or you can buy in 7-Eleven, they don't taste like anything, they taste like nothing, but you could buy these 2 raw peeled hard-boiled eggs, that you could buy them in the fridge by 7-Eleven. How are you giving a hechsher to something? The Gemara says dama b'roisha. So Rav Moshe Feinstein has a big chiddush. Rav Moshe says anytime the Gemara deals with Kabbalistic stuff, any deviation from the Gemara makes it mutter. Any deviation. Even if to us we'd be like, why would that make a difference? We don't understand these things anyway. Once you don't understand something, how are you gonna compare? Rav Moshe said in the Gemara it was referring to a regular balas habayis, a regular woman who's cooking in her kitchen on Friday. She peels some onions and says, I'll do it tomorrow. That's when the Gemara says it's a problem. They weren't talking about commercial. Rav Moshe said making it for a commercial business was never what the Gemara was talking about. Therefore, it's mutter. That's what Moshe says, and it's based on that, the OU also relying on the fact that the Maram Rutenberg says that it doesn't apply anymore. You put the Maram Rutenberg with Rav Moshe Feinstein. That's the head that the OU relies on. Correct, that you could also buy eggs that are raw, that are beaten already 100%. The catering businesses use it, exactly. But it's all rely on that. The onion is only a problem if it's completely peeled. If you cut it in half and leave half the peel on, that's perfectly fine. There are other heterim, I'm not going to go into it now, but that's the major heter from the Gemara itself. So the sauteed onion would be okay if you added some other ingredient, which you did, you added oil. The other place can bring down that if you add some other ingredient, it's fine. So usually when you saute an onion, you usually add oil or salt and pepper or something. So then it would make mutter. Okay, I just want to run through.
And you also mentioned.
Okay, so I just want to mention a couple other them, and then maybe we'll come back to these at the end. Someone texted me and they said that they wanted to know, can they eat if they're not really hungry? Shal Shuddis this time of year is a little bit tough because it's still early. And they want to know if they could eat for Shal Shuddis cereal. So I asked them, I said, is the cereal mezainis or is it shahaka? I'm just curious. Is it, is it Fruity Pebbles, whatever it is? Is it cornflakes? Is it mezainis? She said, no, it's a shahakal cereal. Okay. So it's a very old shaila. This is nothing new. The Shulchan Aruch and Siman Reish Sadi Aleph says, tzarech lasosa bepas. You should have shaloshudis of bread. Some are lenient that you could eat a mezainis. And some are lenient that you could use proteins, like fish or meat. But not fruit. And some are mikol pears. So this yesh oimrim dafilu pears. It's a fourth opinion brought down in the Mechaber. Usvari shana but the Mechaber says the main psak is bread. So for practical halacha, it's better to use bread. If not bread, mezainis. If not mezainis, proteins. If not proteins, fruit. So I told this person, okay, you're relying on that opinion. I said my text was, it's better than nothing. It's better. It would be better to have mezainis cereal. But I will say this, just one point to remember. The place can do comment. When you're eating pashkia, that heter to eat pashkia, normally when shkia happens, it's already a suffix yom, suffix laila. You got to stop. The heter to eat pashkia is because you washed. If you didn't wash, you got to stop. You can't really, if you're not washing, if you wash before shkia, then you could eat until you bench. It could be whenever, even though it's zman for havdala, technically, right? Technically, shkia is already the time where havdala hovers and you can't eat anymore, but you already washed. But if you didn't wash and you're just sipping on popcorn, then many places can say by the time shkia comes, the Aruch HaShulchan says you got to stop. So I just want to mention that point with the cereals. It's not as good, it's fine, but you got to look at the clock much more than when you're washing. You could just go right ahead. Okay, another shaila was someone asked me, they had heard, they wanted to know if it was like a baba ma'isa. It's not a baba ma'isa, but they wanted to know, they had heard that you're not supposed to blow out candles. The Jew doesn't blow out candles. Well, what's up shot in this? So the source is from Kolbai. The Kolbai brings down that you should not blow out a candle, and he says very harsh things. It's dame baroisha, God forbid. We don't blow out candles because ner Hashem nishmas adam. A candle is compared like a soul. We don't blow out a soul. And it's brought down by the Ben Ish Chai in Shana Beis Pinchas Ois Yud Ches. The Ben Ish Chai brings it down la halacha. I will say this though. They asked of Yosef Chaim Zonnerfeld, what if someone doesn't know the halacha? Can they rely on the fact of Shomer P'sam Hashem? Shomer P'sam Hashem is that special heter that Hashem watches over the fools. So technically, you're not supposed to do it, but Hashem watches over the fools. So Yosef Chaim Zonnerfeld said like this: if they don't know about it, Shomer P'sam Hashem. If they know about it or they would adhere to it, tell them. He says, because if it's something they could fix. So I'll tell you practically, the Chanukah candles that came up when I was over here, I like to blow out the candles before I left shul because I want to leave it burning. So I was using my hand to try to get it to go out. On the 6th, 7th, 8th night, it was getting very, very hard. So someone asked me, and I couldn't. I tried, and then I blew it out. And they said, why? So I tried to adhere to this the best that I can. But again, if you can't, you can't. But it's if something that you could. Run through a couple more. This one I had a picture that we spoke about yesterday. I have a picture on my phone. Someone's tzitzis ripped by the hole. And it's mamish. So the 4 strings are hanging by a literal thread. So he wanted to know, is it kosher? So we had this yesterday in Mishnah Berurah Yomi. The Mishnah Berurah writes that there is a shiur. You can't put the tzitzis too close to the corner. It has to be 1 thumb's length away. So from the top of the thumb to the knuckle, it has to be that far away from the corner. So over here, it's way less than that, so it should be possible. But the Shulchan Aruch says in the pasuk, v'asu lahem tzitzis, which means by tzitzis, it matters how you make it, not what it is now. As long as you put it in the proper spot, even if it subsequently rips, it's kosher. So it's technically kosher. But the Mishnah Berurah says you should fix it because 2 reasons. First of all, zeh keli maveh. It's not very beautiful to have tzitzis hanging like that. But also, the average person doesn't know this halacha, and it's going to look very funny to them, and they're going to go over to you and think you're not wearing tzitzis, and it's a matter of sign. It's not a good thing. So get it fixed. But technically, It is still kosher as is, as long as it's still attached because it was placed in the proper spot when it was made. That's the psak of the Shulchan Aruch. Someone just texted me about a couple hours ago. Wife is expecting. Can they go to a manicure or the zoo? So I'll tell you like this: the manicure they should not go to. Okay, because the manicure that's an issue from the Gemara. The Gemara says that if a woman is pregnant, they should not step over fingernails, and stepping over fingernails can be dangerous, God forbid, for the child. I think I mentioned once the reason. The reason is actually going back to the first thing we mentioned, that due to the sin of the Eitz Hadas, the nails rescinded. Who caused the sin of the Eitz Hadas? It was Chava, which means women, the nails are sort of like a memory in Shemayim of the original Chet. When a woman is pregnant, she's in a very vulnerable state. We don't want to be ma'orer that Chet in Shemayim. So we avoid fingernails, stepping over fingernails. So in the house, I'd like to think if the person that she's married to is not a pig, there's no fingernails sitting around the house all the time. But to go to a manicurist place where I would assume, I've never been to a nail salon in my life, but I'd have to assume that there might be shavings on the floor. I would assume. So it's something that I definitely think should avoid. Listen, I will say this. It's very possible. Listen, it's very possible. It's fine. I would say this. Again, I've never been. If I was a pregnant woman, I'm not taking the risk. I'm not. But like I said, you'd have to make sure the concern. I should go for. That's by the way. The next time, yeah, you guys will see me getting a mani pedi for halachic research. The kitzer. But that at least there's a thing. Now, when it comes to the zoo, okay, a lot of pregnant women don't go to the zoo. It's unclear why. There's zero source for it. The closest I found is the Lubavitcher Rebbe writes in one of his letters that there was an old minig that pregnant women did not want to see things that were impure. They didn't want to see things that were tameh. So I guess most animals in the zoo are not kosher animals. Maybe that's what it is. They should go. Exactly. They should go. Yeah, by the way, they can't go on the street. Also, they go to a kosher zoo, go to kosher animals. I don't really know what the source is. I'm not going to make fun of it because if it's something that people have been avoiding it is a thing. Like if you ask many women, they'll have heard of this. But there's really no makar for it. So, but I told the person, I said, if your wife really likes the zoo and it makes her happy, then go to the zoo. Let's avoid the things that the Gemara mentions without, adding things on our own. Good point. The cemetery is the same thing, by the way. There's also no makar for the cemetery of women not going to cemetery funerals. If I had to guess, I would say it's the same thing, avoiding tamei areas. But again, I don't know. And that's why what I tell people, but I'll tell you the difference with that. So I've told people that with women that were pregnant or to go to cemeteries, so I'll tell you this, if they're not showing and they want to go, let's say, to Kivrei Tzadikim, I've heard from Rabbanim it's not the end of the world because there's no makar for it. The only issue is that if a woman's really showing, whether there's a makar or not, enough people will go over to her and say, I don't know if you should be here in a cemetery, that now you're actually getting in the Ayin Hara world. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not saying that there's actually a makar for it, but you don't want to get harassed by it. A zoo, you're not going to get a problem. But a cemetery, okay, at least there might be something to it. I'm not saying that there is, you know what I mean?
The other thing is, for a woman walking down the hill, does it matter if she's wearing shoes? Slippers,
no, it doesn't make a difference. Not to step over it. Okay, just to mention 3 more shilas, just very quickly. I'm not going to go into this one too lengthy. But by the way, if you taka, no, I'm not joking. If there's a pregnant woman in the house and you cut your nail and you drop on the floor, sweep the floor because the Paiskim say that once the nail moves, it loses its potency. So sweep the floor before she walks in front of it. So by the way, she can go to mani pedi. She just got to sweep. You got to sweep before her, Anyway, 3 more shilas. This one I'm not going to go into all the details. I can just tell you very, very bekitzer succinctly why. Someone asked me, how important is it to put silver foil by the crock pot on Erev Shabbos? The answer is yes, it's important. I'll tell you why. First of all, if the food is burning and you want to add hot water, you want to take it out, you need silver foil there, first of all. But that you could just do later, that you could do on Shabbos. You could add silver foil on Shabbos. I'm talking about the second reason, and that is there's a concept called shehiyah. Shehiyah means that if you begin the cooking process and it cooks into Shabbos, there's a concern you'll stoke the coals. The way to fix that is either it'll be fully cooked, which cholent will not be fully cooked when Shabbos begins. It might be machal ben derasai. If it's a third of the way cooked, it's a machlokes whether it's okay. But if it's not even a third of the way cooked, which I have a hard time figuring out the barometers of a third of the way cooked, but let's say it's not a third of the way cooked, then it's usser, and you can't eat the food. But if you put silver foil down, it fixes it. It's a super, super easy solution, and you avoid all the shilas. Now, if it's a third of the way cooked, are some poskim makel? Yeah. But just put the silver foil down, and it fixes all the problems. Because once the silver foil is down, it will remind you not to stoke the coals. It's a reminder. That's it. Again, maybe we'll talk next time about all the details of why, but it's just a very simple solution, and it's something that people should be careful with. It came up last week, because last week when they were in the construction, when they moved the things, they threw out the silver foil. So I had to go to the neighbors to borrow silver foil on Friday, because I don't want, especially people eating here, no shilas, you know what I mean? No, you put it in between the heating, in between the insert and the heating element. Some poskim also cover the knobs, or Moshe felt that was a chumrah. The ikar is to cover the heating surface. You do that, then you're good to go.
You put it on the inside of the...
You mentioned
Last two shilas. Someone called me, and this is one of my old friends who moved to Eretz Yisrael. Apparently, he's in Ramot, and the way it works in Ramot is that there was this one big shul, but what's developed is a lot of small shtibels that are popping up, and they don't have buildings, they're actually renting out gans. They're renting out over Shabbos, they're renting out elementary schools, and they're popping up. And it's becoming very popular because a lot of the people that are davening there are a different vibe, a different energy than in the larger shuls. So apparently this guy was giving him a hard time that you have to daven in the Berev Hadras Melech. How do you make a breakaway minute? And by the way, so I told the guy, I said, first of all, he wanted to know a source. So I said, first of all, this is we've been doing this for hundreds of years. Every neighborhood has a lot of shuls that have pop-up minyanim. There's not just one. If you had to pick the biggest shul in the neighborhood, it would be the Young Israel. That means that everyone should have to daven in the Young Israel. By size of the building, the Young Israel, Kew Garden Hills is probably the biggest, and second is Queens Valley, or maybe Arachaim, that no one else can open up. So how do all the shtibels? And by the way, this was a controversial thing when the Hasidim started, because you had the big, Vilna, shul. I'm sure Mr. Lorch will tell me all, this one, Amsterdam, and then all Hasidim all popped up shtibel. So what's the hatter? So I told him, it's the following lashon of the Radvaz. The Radvaz writes, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah Daf Yutes says, Ein adam loimed el b'makom sheli by chafetz, which means that when you learn, you have to want to learn that topic. If you force me to learn halacha and I don't want to, it's not going to work. So the Gemara says you should always learn when it's coming from a place of enjoyment. Okay, very nice. Says the Radvaz, Kach ein adam mispalel el b'makom sheli by chafetz. A person can only daven in a place that comes from a place of enjoyment. And he says, Al yispalel adam b'makom shetar machshavtoi umevatel kavanasei. Do not daven in a place that you can't focus or that you don't like. And he continues, he says that if it would be up to him, he would say, better daven b'yechidus than to daven in a shul where the people, you don't get along with the people, or you're just not vibing the place. Now, to go that far, Ravadia says, I don't know if I go that far, but if you have both places, they both have minyanim, but just one is the bigger shul. I'm not talking about Megillah. Megillah might be a little different because Pesuminisa. I'm not talking about Megillah. I'm talking about Shabbos. You have two places. You have a little basement shtibel. Man, I'm not talking about someone's house. That's also not. I'm talking shul, but it's 30 guys. The other place has 200 guys. But I vibe those 30 guys. I daven with kavanah there. I can't daven in the place of 200 people. The Radvaz will tell you daven with the 30 people. Not much before in the Radvaz. So I told them before. One last halacha I want to mention, then we'll stop with this, and that is, I think I've mentioned this in the past, but I get so many videos. So I just want to mention it one more time. It's becoming popular, even it used to be that this only came up in the Karlbachian type places, but now it's definitely creeping in to the sort of not mainstream, but more mainstream. We do a lot of neo-Hasidic stuff here, I guess you'd want to say, into davening and emotion and singing, whatever. But the one thing, and I spoke to Yossi about this when he started KMH, and I sort of advised him, don't cross that line. Because it's a halachic problem, not just because it's kind of strange, but it's a halachic problem, and that is a musical hallel with instruments. I am not into it, bichlal. But let me just explain why. Okay. No, during the week. Obviously on Shabbos, before Shabbos. I'm talking during the week. It's becoming a very popular thing. Check your status on every Rosh Chodesh. You'll see big kehilas, especially in Eretz Yisrael, with I saw today a saxophone and a guitar. But let me just explain why I don't follow it. Not just because I think it's, it does remind you a little bit of conservative, but that's not even the reason. It's a very beautiful reason for the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer writes in 3 places that he's against it. Why? We say in the Tehillim, Al Naris Bavo, he says, Eich nashir ashir Hashem al ad mas necher. That when Klal Yisrael comes back from Galus, they say to Hashem, Eich nashir ashir Hashem al ad mas necher. How could we have sung the song of God on foreign land? Says the Chassam Sofer, what does that mean? So simply, what you could argue it means, how could we sing the words of Hashem in a church? But it says the Chassam Sofer, it's not what it says. It says Ad Masnecha. So you know what he says? It says the Chassam Sofer. In the Beis HaMikdash, they did the avodah, which is corresponding to davening, with kalim, with kli zemer. During the Churban, Klal Yisrael says to Hashem, Eich nashir shel Hashem Ad Masnecha. How could I use kalim to sing to you in foreign lands, meaning in shuls? Even to sing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in shuls, how could I bring myself to bring the kalim that were used in the Beis HaMikdash, kalim of instruments, in a shul? And the Chassam Sofer says it's one of the zeichel l'churban. We do not use musical instruments for davening. That is something reserved for the Beis HaMikdash and the Beis HaMikdash only. Now, I could have argued without the Chassam Sofer, there's HaMikdash Ma'at. The Chassam Sofer says we don't do this. He says that's what David HaMelech said, that when we should B'Shem HaShivasi and Hiyinu Kecholmim, then we'll be able to sing shiur with kalim. So it's a very beautiful thing that people want to use it, and B'ez Hashem will use it very soon. But the Chassam Sofer says we don't. And once the Chassam Sofer says you don't, I don't cross that. I don't cross that line. It doesn't matter how much nicer the hallel is to me. I don't cross that line. Again, if other people do it, it's fine. But the Chassam Sofer says that it's usher, and that's the reason why I always avoid it. And I told Yossi also, I said, don't. Not that he was going to. I just told him in the beginning, there's going to be a push, and there was. We don't do this. This is a zeichel l'churban. If we want to have guitars and trumpets and all these things, daven for Mashiach. Bez Hashem Mashiach will have all the kalim, all mekalim shoinim. Bez Hashem.